In the latest Nintendo Direct that just happened on the 13th, we got a second trailer for Raincode, an upcoming game made by both Spike Chunsoft and 2Kyo Games. But the biggest question on almost everyone's mind is this: are Danganronpa and Raincode in the same universe? Could this upcoming game be a sequel? Now, I know I've already done this video for Danganronpa S, and we all know how that went. But trust me on this one, I'm not here to make a final verdict this time. I'm just going to be sharing the evidence as to why this could and could not be a Danganronpa sequel. Right off the bat, many people looked over to the Killer Killer manga as evidence for this secretly being a part of the Danganronpa franchise. If you don't know the story behind Killer Killer, it started off as a manga just made by the people who brought you Danganronpa. But then in chapter 3, it revealed to you that it is indeed a part of the Danganronpa universe. Many people are wondering if this is what they're doing with the Raincode. I mean, there's even the iconic Danganronpa Pink Blood, so there has to be a connection, right? Well, yes, on one hand they could absolutely be pulling a fast one on us with the big twist of this being a part of the Danganronpa universe, but from a marketing perspective, it doesn't really make too much sense. Danganronpa is Spike Chunsoft's #1 IP, so why wouldn't they go flashing it around? But we obviously can't use that as concrete proof, so let's just go over both of Raincode's trailers frame by frame, in some cases literally, to find out an answer. We're immediately introduced to a world that's more Akudama Drive than Danganronpa, with the neon and futuristic yet impoverished setting. We then see the credits for the scenario, music, and design, all three being very prominent figures in the creation of Danganronpa, including Kazutaka Kodaka himself. We're also shown the kanji for Amaterasu X'd out. Amaterasu is the goddess of sun in Japanese mythology. It almost seems like this city is not only raining non-stop, but it might always be nighttime as well, or at least the clouds could be covering the sun. That got me to do a little bit of research as to why this might be happening, and my mind went to two things. One was a supervolcano eruption. Supposedly a supervolcano can cause acid rain to form because of the sulfur dioxide thrown into the air. However, apparently it would cause like a 50% decrease in rainfall afterwards, so it probably isn't a volcano. But then I thought of this. Meteors. Could rain form because of meteors? And the answer is yes. Under certain circumstances, it can. And after all this confusing math I do not want to get into, if a meteor crashes into the ocean, it can cause rainfall for hours, days, months, or even years, depending on its size. Because we know in Danganronpa V3, if what we're shown is true, we know that it was a barrage of meteors that hit Earth, a meteor shower. So if a few meteors took a deep plunge into the ocean, a few parts of the world could see some rainfall for a really long time. And it is specifically mentioned to be the city of perpetual rain, meaning it doesn't rain elsewhere in the world like it does here. And so the point of all this is, maybe there's a connection? But the more I look through the trailer, I realize the Amaterasu signs are posted around the city, but most of them are attacking it in some way, saying anti-Amaterasu in some, and the crossed out sign I mentioned before. Meanwhile, this corporate-looking building appears to be promoting it. This has nothing to do with the Danganronpa X Raincode, I just thought I'd mention it because it's probably relevant to the story and I just wanted you to see it. We then see a pyramid in ruins with similar to the Nazca lines, which were made over 2,000 years ago and presumably made in order for the gods in the skies to see them, again relating back to Amaterasu. And then with the iconic pink blood, we see the text, "A brand new dark fantasy mystery." This is where part of me believes that this really is a new story separate from Danganronpa, and one of the biggest pieces of evidence for it. But then I looked at the title of the trailer, and it says it's a trailer for the game Enigma Archives Raincode. But then if we see the new trailer, it reveals the game's name has been updated to Master Detective Archives Raincode. That may seem unrelated, but it goes to show that they didn't have a 100% concrete plan for this game at the time, and obviously something changed between November, when the first trailer dropped, and now. Possibly, big possibly, this statement could have changed as well, but I'm not saying that as a fact, mainly just pointing out that things could have changed. After that, we get this compilation of clips and screenshots from the game, although I don't think the screenshots in the background are overly important. I think this sequence is, though, and I want to revisit it later. However, in one of the clips, if we go frame by frame, we do in fact see that tasty looking pink blood in some in-game footage. but then it immediately shows it clearly in the next shot, so yeah. But moving on to the second trailer, we see the same gloomy city with, this time, narration. We're told that this is the city of perpetual rain and that it's controlled by corporate overlords and many mysteries remain unsolved. We're then introduced to 5 master detectives, including the protagonist, who come from outside of the city. Interestingly enough, despite all of the anti-Amaterasu and the corporate companies seeming to be the antagonists, we appear to be meeting up with the other detectives inside the main Amaterasu building. We find out that the protagonist has memory problems, much like every single other Danganronpa protagonist, and that he's haunted by a Shinigami that can send you to a detective dimension where you can play the Club Penguin minecart surfing minigame. Gameplay in this dimension appears to be very similar to Danganronpa's trial minigames, and I don't even think I have to mention the shot. So now with us going through the trailers, I have 2 main points to talk about: the characters and the settings. Let's talk about the characters first. Nearly every single one of these characters resembles a previous Danganronpa character in some way. We have Yuma, the protagonist, who looks like if Naegi and Kirigiri had a kid. I mean, the kid's basically an ultimate detective and has amnesia. He's got traits from both parents. And then we have Shinigami, who's basically just Junko Enoshima down to the twin tails and hairpiece. This time it just seems like she's found a new hip trend to dress after. Looking over the master detectives, we've got Persona Guy, girl who looks like Miu or a daughter of Miu, Jotaro if he grew up and was okay with showing his face, an older Kyosuke who only has one eye and even has a cane that probably has to turn into a sword, right? Then finally we have a girl who looks like if Monomi was a human with the pink rabbit and bow in her hair. Next up we have Guy, who's going to be the Nagito or Rantaro of this game. And finally, this little brat. I don't really have anything else to say about him. In terms of characters and design, it really does seem like they could possibly be future characters or the kids of some of the Danganronpa characters. Or the designers just don't know how to make original designs. Could be either one. But now, finally, I wanted to talk about the setting and what kind of world this game takes place in. It's heavily advanced, has ghosts, and appears to have some kind of magic in it. Now, reading this new updated title, Master Detective Archives Rain Code, it could just be me, but it doesn't seem like this takes place in the physical world. Rain code, like a computer's coding. I'm thinking a simulation. And because it's about Master Detective Archives, it could be something almost like Assassin's Creed, where you go back in the past to figure out whatever you do in those games. But in this, you go back and try and solve past cases. Look at the sequence again, showing screenshots and clips from the game. It almost looks like a representation of a digital storage as we look through it, as though we're looking through archives. Or perhaps because the protagonist is a detective trainee, this could simply be a training program of sorts. The simulation theory explains the magic and ghosts, much like it explained the giant mechs in Danganronpa 2. And speaking of which, that was the explanation for why the protagonists lost their memory in Danganronpa 2, and was somewhat redone in Danganronpa V3 for a certain part of the game. Clearly, Spike Chunsoft loves simulating amnesia. I do think that regardless if this truly does take place in the same world as Danganronpa, it'll be revealed at the end of the game that it was all a simulation, possibly based on the real world much like Danganronpa 2 was. But if it takes place in the world of Danganronpa, this could be some kind of training program Kirigiri is putting her son through, because she totally seems like the type of mother who would do that, and then suddenly a virus pops up, that being Shinigami, who very well could be a new iteration of Junko Enoshima. But maybe this time she's good, or at least there's a greater evil. Or, thinking about it, in Danganronpa V3, we were introduced to Team Danganronpa, while on this we seem to be introduced to some kind of organization that we appear to work for, mind you, that has to do with the sun goddess Amaterasu. If we were to compare this to the real world, or the world of Danganronpa, this company could be Team Danganronpa, the goddess would be Junko Enoshima, and Shinigami would be Monokuma, who is a fun-looking representation of Junko. Now, let's say all this is true. Think about it like this. If Amaterasu is Team Danganronpa, and the world doesn't want Amaterasu, that means the world doesn't want Team Danganronpa. Sounds normal, right? A world of hope doesn't want despair. But look at it closer. Does this world really look like one filled with hope? This looks like a futuristic dystopia. And why would we be playing as a detective, seemingly for Amaterasu, and therefore Team Danganronpa? We are on the side of despair in this. And if we're on the side of despair, well, hope, it doesn't look too good. or I'm overthinking things and it's a complete coincidence that I had a theory for V3 with an almost exact premise for this to be the direction a sequel would head in, us joining despair in some way because hope doesn't look as good as it seemed. Aside from my simulation theory, which is admittedly kind of a cop-out, there isn't really any concrete proof or way of explaining the connection between Danganronpa and Raincode. Yes, it's made by the guys who made Danganronpa, and yes, there's pink blood, and yes, the characters can be thrown into a Danganronpa game without anyone batting an eye. But on the other hand, they say multiple times it is a new IP, it's a completely new world, and it has magic in it. Sci-fi is one thing, but different minecart dimensions is a whole other thing. Well, those were my thoughts. What do you all think? Could this be part of the Danganronpa universe, or do you think those who think that are crazy? I've given my thoughts on it, and to be completely honest, I'm fine with whatever outcome we get. Regardless of the potential connections to Danganronpa, Raincode seems like an amazing game, and I hope you all agree. So with that being said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.